right, John, are you ready for a Sega twofer today as we talk about the top 10 games for both the Game Gear and the Sega Saturn? Because sad to say, Game Gear did not get as much love as I was hoping. It did all right as far as voting is concerned, but it didn't get the variety I was hoping for. I was really hoping to discover some new games with this one, and I did, but not enough for it to make a lot of the top 10.
So we're just kind of getting Game Gear out of the way then to get to the real star of the show being Saturn.
Yes. It is. I grew up with a Game Gear, but no, I am part of the problem. I had four games for
Mm.
this system. Uh,
And six double A's, so yeah, it's a costly endeavor to keep the Game Gear alive, let alone get games for it.
yeah. I actually did have a accessory that attached to the back, made it even bigger because the Game Gear was not small. That did make it rechargeable, which was
Mm.
nice, but it was huge.
Yeah, it was very impressive for the time too, because not only was it full color, but it was also backlit, and this was competing with just the regular monochrome Game Boy. So it was leagues ahead of what Game Boy did technologically, at least.
Yeah, but it's the games that just, at least in the States, that just did not stand out.
Mm.
However, upon learning this, looking into this, it did have unique games, but the games that were ports, or yeah, that just stood out the most. So I'm not going to have you vote, like guess in the same way as before. We're just going to run through these pretty quickly. As far as what we got here. So all relatively close, at least in the early bits. But number 10 with 94 points. I should also mention that there were 78 votes for this, so it did all right. And 118 different games were said. But I think that the narrow gap between the amount of games and the amount of votes, I think, really underlies how little variety people
Mhm.
feel about there is the Game Gear, which is sad because it is a neat little system. It struggles to have an identity.
Yeah.
I've learned over time. But anyway, number 10 with 94 points, Streets of Rage 2.
Okay. And did that have a Master System version too, or was that just Game
It
Gear?
It did have a
It did.
Master System version as well. And basically in addition, I just took a quick look on the wiki to see what the difference is. Basically, there are different levels. The graphics are, of course, better or worse. Max Thunder is not playable in the game, so he's
Uh,
just not one of the playable games. And the Game Gear version does not show enemy names, so it's a pared down version. It's what you'd expect for the Game Gear, but hey, you get Streets of Rage 2 on the go.
mhm.
Not exactly as exciting nowadays, which is why I was hoping for more original stuff, but that's the way it is. Um, at number 9 with 95 points, so only 1 point ahead, Rystar, which
Oh.
which I looked into this one as well, and it actually is quite a bit different, or at least a little different, because it's the same basic game, but the level design is changed up. So I would actually compare this to uh, Donkey Kong Country to Donkey Kong Land.
Sure. It's very
It's
rare you hear about the 8-bit version of Rise Star. I guess because they'd never re-released it. It's always just the Mega
no,
Drive one. Um, I've never actually played the 8-bit one. I'm quite curious to see how they did it.
yeah. There actually is a note here. Is like this has never been. It's been re-released only once as
Hmm.
one of the 20 games included in Sonic's Play Pal Plug and Play, a controller that hooks straight up to the television.
Okay.
So thank you for that little bit of notes. At number 8, we finally have an original game. I just hit my water bottle.
Too excited.
I'm too excited. I hit my water bottle. The GG Shinobi 2, The Silent Fury at
Mm.
118. An original Game Gear exclusive version of Shinobi that was sort of shown as a highlight of what the system could do
Yeah, very
at the
cool
time.
one. If this hadn't made the list, I think there'd be some shenanigans because this is for sure one of the best Game Gear games.
Yeah. So fortunately, it came in at number 8. However, despite the screen crunch, despite everything else, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 still beat it at number 7 with 121 points. By 3 points, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 made it, despite all the issues.
Yeah, I knew this would make it. Like, despite some issues, despite Master System being better, it's still iconic. People
Yeah.
still, you look at the box art of the paraglider, that's sort of ingrained in your mind, even though the paraglider isn't very good. It is an iconic game.
Yeah, and I think here's the big reason I think it makes it. It's actually been re-released.
True.
There's ways to play. That's the thing. I'm looking at a lot of these games. There's just not a lot of ways to play these old games. But the Sonic Game Gear games constantly get re-released.
Mm.
But at number 6, beating it by 1 point, the Game Gear version of Gunstar Heroes.
I haven't played that either. I think that there's a whole
Uh,
realm of 8-bit versions of iconic Mega Drive games that I'm kind of missing out on.
yeah, I mean, I took a look at it. It shockingly is very much Gunstar Heroes, just a lot uglier.
Yeah. It sounds cool,
But
though.
yeah, I mean, it actually is playable there. So it honestly looked pretty solid. But again, blown up
Yeah.
when you watch it through YouTube. It's pretty ugly as sin. All right, John, are you ready for the Sonic domination? Because it begins
We
now.
knew this would be coming. Okay.
And this is a big reason I just left it off. Didn't worry about it. At number 5 with 127 points, beating out Gunstar Heroes by 5 points, Sonic Drift 2.
Sonic Drift 2?
Sonic Drift 2 got number 5.
It's better than Sonic Labyrinth getting number 5. I guess there's still
Yeah,
time. I guess it could still be in the top
Sonic
5.
Labyrinth could still be in there. Yep. I never played this as a kid. I know it's a better kart racer than the original Sonic Drift, but it's
Mm.
still the real estate is so tiny,
Yeah.
but
I did play
it's
this growing up. I was never very good at it though. I don't know. I should try it again in modern day, but I always found 2D kart races quite tricky to control back then. Now that I've played a lot more
Mhm.
F-Zero and Super Mario Kart, it might be easier now. But yeah, back
Could
then I
be.
struggled so much with this one.
Yeah. I never touched it. I've only seen playthroughs, and despite all the Game Gear collections, I've never gone through and played a
Mhm.
bunch of those. I never got any of the games that where those were available, weirdly enough. Anyway, number 4, with 151 points, Sonic Chaos.
Okay.
We've already talked about this on as far as the Master System. I grew up with this version. I like it. It's good.
Yeah,
It's fun.
this
It's
is
a
good.
fun Sonic game. I played it way more than Sonic 2 because I could actually beat the damn thing. Number 3 with 175 points, Sonic the Hedgehog, the
hmm
original.
So we're missing Triple Trouble and Tails Adventure and Labyrinth. They could still come up though.
Mhm. Yes. What do you think takes two and one? I'll let you guess those.
I think Triple Trouble is number 2, and
Hmm.
then 1, probably not another Sonic game. Maybe Ninja Gaiden.
No, I told you, Sonic Domination
Oh, it's
begins.
all Sonic.
It's
Okay,
all Sonic.
then
Number 2, Tails Adventure.
okay, all right. I mean, it's a cool one. There's nothing quite like Tails Adventure.
You got yourself a Metroidvania-esque Tails game.
Yeah.
So that's different. That's fun. At least it's an original title. I'm glad that the top 2 at least were original titles because yeah, number 1 blowing away the competition with 369 points, Sonic Triple Trouble, which is
Mm,
my favorite because that's the one I played the most. It introduced Fang the Sniper, or however all the different names he has.
yeah.
It was just fun because I like the idea of already like, oh, it's Eggman and Knuckles you're going against, and now in this one you're going up against Eggman, Knuckles, and this new guy. So
Mm. It was very
it-
ambitious for its time. I'm so happy that Blast and Labyrinth didn't find their ways onto the list. I mean, Sonic 2 you can maybe question, but the rest of them they're all solid Sonic games.
yeah, they're all absolutely good, and for a lot of Americans, the Game Gear is how a lot of people played
Yeah.
Sonic 1, 2, and Chaos. So and if you haven't, I don't know, it's extremely different from the original version, but there is a fan version of Triple Trouble that is fantastic, and
Mm.
I actually played it, and I'd put it on like near the same level as Sonic Mania.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It is quite good, but yeah, that's our top 10. Going beyond the top 10, just to note some placements of games that are a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. Just missing out by 2 points at number 11, Shining Force: The Sword of Hagia.
It's a shame Shining Force didn't make it, but
Yeah,
almost.
I mean, from what I understand, Game Gear was actually quite a quite a RPG powerhouse. There was a
Mm,
lot of RPGs on this system, but of course they stayed in Japan or
yeah.
didn't get a lot of note because RPGs hadn't blown up yet. Number 12, just 1 point behind. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
Hmm.
I think that's fair. Puzzle games on the go just make sense.
Yeah.
Uh, 13 was the original GG Shinobi.
Hmm.
14 was Castle of Illusion. 15 was Columns. Again, puzzles on the go. I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan of Columns myself, but again, I played it the Genesis version nowadays. So back in the day, Columns makes
It
sense
was
to
very
have
much
on the go.
Sega's Tetris in that era.
Yeah. Number 16, Power Strike 2 slash GG Alestu, an original shooter
Mm,
for the Game Gear. Top down, bullet hell. Uh, love it.
yeah.
It's like great. That's a great thing to see. Um, 17 is Sylvan Tale, which looking it up, seems to be a bit Zelda like.
Mm,
So that's cool to have that there again. Original. 18 Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap. 19 Fatal Fury Special. I was shocked out that did so well.
yeah.
And then at 20, Mega Man for Game Gear, which is
Okay.
not a great
No,
game.
no Panzer Dragoon Mini showing up. I'm so curious
No,
about that game. No one talks about it. I've never seen it in the wild. I want to know if it's
I
actually good.
I hear it's not great.
Okay.
It got 3 points. But yeah, Fantasy Star Adventure that didn't make the top 40 at all. It was super low. Same with
Mm,
Fantasy Star Gaiden. Um, Puyo Puyo was one of the like 6 games tied at for 29 at 30 points, just to have that there for you. Uh, but yeah, as far as other stuff, like Sonic Labyrinth was 22. It beat out Tails Sky Patrol and Shining
mm.
Force Gaiden 3 and
uh,
Defenders of Oasis and Dragon Crystal.
okay. Can we change that ourselves? Can we just eradicate that from the list?
Yeah. Sonic Blast it didn't make the top 30, but it did make the top 40. Sonic Blast with 24 points, tying with Streets of Rage and Vampire Master of Darkness, which is kind of a Castlevania clone.
Yeah.
So
Did Echo the Dolphin rank anywhere?
no,
We've had this
no,
Echo inertia through all this. No one's voting for Echo. Have
no.
the people
Echo,
forgotten the dolphin?
I think they have. It's been
Oh,
too long.
mm,
One you might be most interested in, also hitting 30 points and being in that lineup of just 29 of people things ranking tying at 29. Monogatari 3,
oh,
The Ultimate Queen.
that's a
You know
very
that
tough
one.
one because no, it's Japan only, so I doubt many people have played it or even heard of it. But it's very cool that it made the list in some capacity.
Basically, that is Puyo Puyo. That's not Puyo Puyo.
Yeah,
It's RL's original games, if I by my
that's
understanding, correct?
correct. Yeah, it was a dungeon crawler that sort of like Puyo Puyo is a spin off of that. Yeah, so a lot of the
Hmm.
characters come from that more RPG like game. We're getting a new one. Well, I think it was meant to release at the end of
Are we?
last year, but it didn't. So it must be sometime this year. Only in
Huh.
Japan, as far as I know so far. But yeah, there's a new one coming.
Another one that ranked pretty well, GG Alest 3, which never actually released. This is a Star Fox 2 situation. It didn't, it hit the top 30 kinda.
Mm.
Um, it's actually it never released, but there was a collection of GG games or less games, and that was part of it. It got finished and made available.
Wow,
So
that's always cool.
cool stuff.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the Game Gear. It's
Yeah, we can
there's some
up
good
the
games in
energy
there.
now because we're at
There,
a much more interesting console,
yeah.
especially in
There,
terms of what people are going to vote for.
Sonic Triple Trouble and Tails Adventure being at the top makes sense. I'm glad GG Shinobi 2 there, but the rest being ports.
Mm. I mean, the thing
Mm,
with Sega Saturn, which we're about to talk about, there are 3 Sonic games, and none of them are really original other than Sonic R. So we got Sonic R, 3D Blast, and we have Jam. I
mhm.
think there's still a strong likelihood that people will vote for all of them, but Saturn also has a lot of really cool games that have never been ported anywhere, and so that's what makes
Yeah.
this so interesting to talk about retroactively. Lots of great arcade ports, lots of original games, lots of stuff that's only in Japan. I have no idea what to expect. I don't know what people voted for.
Yeah, I had a Saturn growing up, but this is before I really got into reading game magazines and
Mm,
learning about stuff beyond what I see at the store. Um So I missed out. I got a few of the major things from Saturn, but I missed out on a lot of
Mm,
others, and it's a shame, especially when you look at the time and like I I always think back to Mac McMuscle's old "What Happened on the Saturn," where he talked about how only a quarter of the games ever released to the Saturn released in the states.
yeah.
Three quarters of the games stayed in Japan, and that's brutal.
Yeah. Anyone who buys a physical Saturn, you need to get an action replay for a few reasons. So a lot of Saturn games need cartridges, RAM cartridges that get put in.
Mhm.
You get 4 MB RAM cartridges with games like Vampire Savior. But if you get an action replay, that's both RAM built in because it's a cartridge,
Mm.
but it's also a region bypasser. So it's just logical to get one of those rather than a RAM cartridge, because that way you can play Japanese games and any import you like, just from the outset. So
Yeah.
that's an essential thing for Saturn.
I know Saturn emulation for a while struggled, but I
Mm,
think I've heard it's starting to get better, where it's
I think
actually
it is. Yeah,
being a bit more viable, which is good because Sega refuses to re-release a lot of these games, which is come on.
yeah.
Like they I was so hoping for a Saturn Mini, but c'est la vie.
Mm,
But as for Sega Saturn itself, we had 174 votes, marking across 195 games, which is rather solid, especially when you compare it to the Genesis, which
yeah.
had 200 votes and 202 games. So, actually, if it had gotten as many votes, it might have had just as much variety, if not more, than the Genesis console, which is, again, shows how solid the Saturn was.
Yeah.
But shall we get to it? John, what is the number 10 game for the Sega Saturn?
I'm stabbing in the dark here because I really have no idea what people would have went for. I'm gonna say, I think this game is very iconic to the Saturn, but I don't think it's gonna rank in like the top 5. So let's go with Virtua Fighter 2.
Virtual Fighter 2 is not number 10. It is in the top 10 because I've heard people complain that I'm not giving you enough hints,
Okay,
but it is not number 10. Number 10 is Sonic Jam.
it's cool. It's
Uh,
it's a cool collection. What was really cool about this one is going forward, everything's just emulated, right? Sonic
mhm.
Jam ports all the games to the Saturn, so they're running natively. Any slowdown that would have happened on Mega Drive just doesn't happen here. And then you get Sonic World, where you can run around in a 3D space, and I love that model. That 32-bit
It's a
Sonic
great
model
model.
is one of my favorite Sonic designs. It's really chill just to run around in that area. May not necessarily be something like completely new, but it's a very good game.
It's one of those things where makes sense that the other Sonic games didn't make it, but literally every Sonic game in this collection made it on the
Mhm.
list of the Genesis top 10, which makes it a little bit of a bummer is that it made it over something else, like some other game. But at least it is original, where it has, it is those perfect ports. This is almost technically the best way to play those original games,
Mm,
and because it has that Sonic World, it has a bunch of gallery content, and it even included the spin dash. It was the first time the spin dash
that's
was
right.
included in Sonic One.
Yeah,
So, and
which
there were
that didn't
even
happen
easy
again
and
for a
normal
long time.
modes. Yeah,
That's commonplace now. Every time there's a port now, that's just expected. But yeah, for ages, Sonic One didn't have a spin dash outside of Gem.
yeah, it's it, it's not a bad game. I mean, I there was a lot of people who voted for Mario All Stars as well, but for on SNES. But it's one of those things. Like, should I ban collections because it's kind of a cheat? But I also
Yeah,
like I just want people to be open. It's like what wins wins. So
yeah. We've made
I,
that
I'm
decision
I'm
already with Metroid Prime Trilogy. We said that one's not going to be
yeah,
counted, but
'cause there's so little like the motion controls. I don't think
mm,
change that, and I don't want it to dominate.
yeah.
So, um, all right, number 9.
Okay, this one I think maybe should be higher up, but I'm going to say Gunstar, Guardian Heroes.
Guardian Heroes.
Mm,
It is not Guardian Heroes,
okay.
and unfortunately, Guardian Heroes did not make the top 10.
I suspected it would, if it made the top 10 at all, I expected it to be pretty like high up.
It was so close. It
Mm,
is at number 11. It
okay.
was neck and neck with Sonic Jam, and then the last set of votes came in, and
Mm.
Sonic Jam took it. Guardian Heroes was so close to making it. However, I am quite happy with number 9 and what we got for number 9 instead. At number 9, with 255 points, beating out Sonic Jam by 23, Radiant Silvergun.
Ooh. I would have liked this to be a lot higher up, but I'm glad it's here. Like, this is like one of the coolest shmups ever. It's so there's a lot of depth to this. Like you feel like you're actually sort of piloting a mech almost with all these different moves you get. It's available now on modern systems as well. It's one of the few Saturn games that you can sort of play anywhere. It's genuinely so good. If you've played Ikaruga, I think this is like a natural evolution point, like to just play more shmups.
Yeah, I've heard of it quite a bit, but I've never played it because this is a Japanese only release
Mm,
in
that's right.
for the original Saturn. We didn't get it worldwide until the 360 in 2011, and then again with the Switch in 2022. So and now it's available on PCs as of 2023. So it is much more widely available now, which I think is why it did well. Because
Yes.
again, you re-release these games and they have a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so good. I'm glad people voted for it. It is one of the best Saturn games.
Yeah, I was happy to see it on here. I saw it was getting a bunch of points. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see this happen. So yeah, great to see. It's just I need to play more shooters like this, but I'm terrible at them, so I don't tend to gravitate toward them.
Hmm.
So it is what it is. But yeah, let's get to number 8. John, what is number 8 for the Sega Saturn?
Okay. I reckon. I don't know if all three of the Panzer Dragoons are going to make it on here. I think two of them will.
Mhm.
I think this might be Panzer Dragoon Zwei, which is the sequel, Panzer Dragoon 2.
It is not Panzer Dragoons Y.
Okay.
At number 8, with 264 points, beating out Radiant Silver Gun by 9. Burning Rangers.
Burning Rangers. Okay.
Burning Rangers. Got our, what is it? Firefighter arcade game,
Yeah.
essentially.
That's a cool pick.
Yeah, I was shocked to see how well that was doing. I didn't hear about Burning Rangers until I played Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed because it had a level.
Yeah.
But I know it's a fan favorite. You play as like I think you're in an underwater thing trying to stop fires so it doesn't blow up or something like that. But
Mm,
it's an arcadey firefighter game, except futuristic and wacky.
yeah.
And people want to see more. It is a fan favorite, deservedly so because again, it hit this top 10, which Sega doesn't talk about it. It's not been re-released, so the fact that it made here at all is incredibly impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Sega with Sonic Team specifically, they did quite a bit on the Saturn that wasn't Sonic. Like we have Knights, which I'm
Mm.
sure is going to make it as well. But it's rad seeing how that team sort of explored a bit more in this era outside of just Sonic, and it kind of benefited Sonic in the long run to stretch their legs and get a bit more creative.
Yeah, I'd say so. I say so because at the time you look at the what was supposed to be Sonic Extreme and you're like, oh, that could have been cool, and you really look at it as like, I don't know
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, yeah. I miss that era. Even stuff
Mhm.
like Billy Hatcher on the GameCube, like it might not have been the best game ever, but I think giving them a break from Sonic and letting them explore more just makes Sonic more interesting.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, let's get to number 7.
Okay.
What is number 7?
Yeah, this is probably far too low to guess, but I think Sega Rally is going to be on here. And I don't know if people would rank it like top five. Yeah, let's stick with Sega Rally.
Sega Rally Championship.
Hmm.
It is not Sega Rally Championship. Sega Rally Championship came in at number 13.
Oh, that is surprising.
Yeah, it was doing well. I didn't really hear people talk about this one
Yeah.
before this point, but it started getting points of like, oh crap, it's doing really well,
Mm,
but it didn't quite make it. It just wasn't quite there.
yeah.
However, at number 7, Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei.
Okay. Yeah. Very, very cool. I don't. Has the original made it too, or is Spy the one that people gravitated to?
I'm gonna leave that up to you.
Okay, all right. So,
I will say I've never touched Y.
mm,
I played the original Panzer Dragoon.
mm.
What does Y add to to it? Like I don't know.
It's mostly a more refined Panzer Dragoon. So it gets a bit more higher in scope, it gets a bit more interesting. But for the most part, it is just kind of more Panzer Dragoon. And for those who haven't played Panzer Dragoon, I guess picture Star Fox, but being able to change which way you're looking. So instead of always
Mhm.
being dead on, you can look to the left or look to the right or look behind you. And that's so unique for an on-rail shooter.
Oh yeah.
And you've got this really great sort of sci-fi desolate setting. It's like a mix of ancient and futuristic. It's such a cool series. I expect, even regardless of your answer just now, I expect a Panzer Dragoon one will make it as well. Just because I think that's more of an iconic game. But Savai, I would say, is probably the better one though.
Oh, okay. I I'd like to try it. I know we have a remake coming via Forever, but who knows if that'll be any good.
Yeah,
So
no
it's like I
comment.
just re-release the original. Just re-release the original. All right. Number 6, John. By the way, Zwei only beat Burning Rangers by 21 points.
Okay.
So the lower half of this list was extremely close.
Yeah. Okay. Number 6.
Number 6.
Let's go. So I said Virtua Fighter 2 earlier.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I think there's some cooler games for the top 5, and I'm not sure Virtua Fighter. Let's stick with Virtua Fighter 2 for number 6.
Virtua Fighter 2 for number 6. It is not
Okay.
Virtua Fighter 2 for number 6. You can't keep this hedgehog down at number 6, Sonic R. Which I don't know if I agree with. I've never really played Sonic R, but for everything I've seen of Sonic R, is like, is it really that good of a game? I like the soundtrack is amazing,
Yeah.
but the gameplay looks no.
It's a guilty pleasure of mine. Like I like playing Sonic R every now and then. Is it good? No, not really. um, but it is just kind of fun though. It's fun memorizing all the shortcuts. There's definitely a big vibe to it. Some characters are much better than others. Like Sonic can double jump. Amy has a car, and her like handling is terrible. But there is a joy to Sonic R. Well, I will say this: the Saturn version has a much lower draw distance than I think people are familiar with from the Gems Collection version. So if you play it on an actual
Oh.
Saturn, it is technically a lot harder to play than any future releases and the PC version. But I won't question it. I think this is it's hard to imagine the Saturn without
It's
Sonic R.
yeah, yeah. It is one of those games. Like I would see Sonic R at the stores, but I saw it was a racing game. Like,
Mm.
like I was a Sonic fan, and even I was like, I don't know about this. I never picked it up.
But this was the Saturn Sonic game.
It pretty much was.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. I was seeing it. I kept seeing it climb up. It's like no way. Like I know people like their Sonic games, but there's
At
no.
least it's not
Nope.
number one. I think we're
Yeah.
fine there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Number 5.
Number 5. Okay.
By the way, Sonic R only beat Panzer Dragoon 2's Y by 6 points.
Oh, it was close. Okay, someone
Mhm.
could have changed that, but we're better off.
Mhm.
All right. Let's go with number 5. I think. I struggle to go for Japanese only games. Darkstalkers had Darkstalkers 3 Vampire Savior. I think might be here.
It is not Vampire Savior.
Okay.
Vampire Savior, it did okay at first, but then it just sort of dropped off.
Yeah, I thought as much. I think if this released globally, it probably would have ranked around here, but it's limited.
it's in the top 40.
Oh,
So it did okay. But not nowhere close to 10.
yeah.
No, instead at number 5, beating out Sonic R by 8 points, Panzer Dragoon.
Okay. It's very
Yep.
very iconic game. If you've got a Saturn and you've not played Panzer Dragoon, I think you're missing out on like the probably the most iconic franchise on the system.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's I remember playing it back in the day and just being kind of blown away by like this is my first encounter with cutscenes
Mm,
because I didn't I they were much more impressive I think on the PlayStation with Final Fantasy VII,
yeah.
but Panzer Dragoon still had these really impressive cutscenes, and then you get into combat, and it kind of just sucks you in. Like I'm not a shooter fan, but this was just like it. It sucked me in a way that not even Star Fox really has. There was something about the setting and the fact that
Mm,
you're riding a dragon and the shifting of the where you were shooting that just I don't know. I just really enjoyed, and I imagine is why it's probably the better game,
yeah.
but I think more people have tried out the original.
I think so. Yeah. I think Panzer Dragoon feels a lot more like grounded than Star Fox. It's less a little less cinematic, a bit more just sort of dealing with everything that comes your way. But the soundtrack is just phenomenal. That opening level soundtrack is sort of ingrained in my mind. And it
Mhm.
is it's the game that introduced the core mechanics of Panzer Dragoon, and so just having a rail shooter where you can turn around is still a really cool idea. And I can't really think of any other rail shooter that's tried that other than Panzer
I
Dragoon.
I can't either.
Yeah,
It's yeah, it's not coming to mind. So, incredibly unique. Would love to see this game return.
yeah.
Made by Sega.
It'd be nice if Sega took it themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 it would. Um, but yeah, I great to see.
Hmm.
But all right, number 4.
Well, Sega Rally didn't make it, so it might be foolish to say this. But Daytona USA.
It is not Daytona USA. I
Okay.
I was rooting for that too because I did grow up with Daytona USA. I had
Hmm.
a lot of fun with it. It actually is number 14. It
Oh,
lost
okay.
to Sega Rally Championship by 1 point. It was a
Sega
one
Rally,
point.
I think Sega Rally is the better game, but Daytona is, it's such an iconic one, especially for the Saturn.
Oh yeah, I played the heck out of that. It was weird to me to have only like 4 tracks, but I like the arcadey feel of it.
Yeah,
Um, because my family was actually into NASCAR, so I had a NASCAR game on the Saturn. It was like that one was more realistic, but it was boring compared to what
yeah.
Daytona USA was doing. So I played Daytona USA more. But instead, at number 4, beating Panzer Dragoon by 9 points, here is Virtual Fighter 2.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure how people would vote for this one, but it's a very cool one. It's interesting because there's a Mega Drive and a 32X version of Virtua Fighter as well. And I think this kind of shows the jump because the 32X
Mm,
version's playable, but this one's just arcade perfect. That's what it feels like anyway. And that
yeah,
that sort of blocky 32-bit art style still looks really good today. Like that hasn't really aged.
it looks really good. And look at the graphical jump from Virtual Fighter 1 to 2.
Yeah, it's
Like
wild.
it was incredible to see at the
Mm,
time. Because I played Virtual Fighter was one of those games I had on the Saturn,
mm.
and I never had 2, but I rented 2. Either rented or played at a friend's house, and just had a blast with it. I even played Virtual Fighter Kids.
Yeah. And I guess people probably may not be as familiar with the Saturn controller, but it's a six-button controller. Mega
Mhm.
Drive had that as like a variant, but this is the core controller, and it's perfect for fighting games. It's so good for Virtua Fighter. It's great for Vampire Savior and Street Fighter. But it feels like it was just sort of made for this kind of game, and
Yeah,
it's just so well tailored.
it really is. And if memory serves, this is our first fighting game to make a top 10.
Yeah, yeah. I was surprised that Street Fighter 2 didn't make. I guess it might in the arcade list maybe, but
I think that's where this Street Fighter and a lot of Capcom games are going to
yeah.
shine once we do arcade. But
Mm.
yeah,
But I guess the
uh,
core difference so far is a lot of fighting games have been like arcade ports rather than you want to vote for the stuff that you sort of acknowledge with the system rather than acknowledging with the arcade. And I think Virtua Fighter is so tied to the Saturn. You think Sega
mhm,
Saturn when you think Virtua Fighter 2. You don't really think arcade in the same way.
yeah, at least in the states.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't think I didn't really have arcades around me as a kid.
Yeah.
All right, top 3, John. What came in at number 3?
This is difficult. I think I hope people have put it in the top 10. I'm pretty certain they have, but I'm not certain how many people have played it. Panzer Dragoon Saga, I think, is number 3.
Number 3 is not Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Hmm.
At number 3, we have a dark horse here. I did not expect it to do this
Is
well.
it Shining Force 3?
Shining
Yes.
Shining Force 3. Shining Force 3 at number 3 with 325 points, beating Virtua Fighter by about 15.
I knew this would be in the top 3. I wasn't sure where to put it, though. Shining Force 3 is another one that it's really expensive. It's really hard to get hold of. I wasn't sure how many people have actually played this game. But it's just one of the crowning jewels of the Saturn. It's so well made. Anyone who's a fan of
Strategy RPGs.
yeah, strategy RPGs. Anyone who's a fan of that genre should absolutely give this a go. It is one of the greats.
Yeah, I've not played it myself. I've seen gameplay of it, and it definitely looks of its time. But I remember back in college, people talking about how good Shining Force 3 was. Like it was notable at the time because if you played it, you loved it. It's just how many people actually played it, and that's the
Yeah.
tricky part. And this does deserve a re-release, and it'd be nice to see, especially because these are the same devs who went on to make Golden Sun. You like
this
Golden
is
Sun?
Camelot. This is the Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, Golden Sun developers.
Yeah, most Shining Force games done by them
Yeah.
up to that point. So, it just really cool idea. I'd love to see re-release. I would pick it up in a heartbeat just to finally be able to play it. But yeah,
Man.
I was very happy to see.
Yeah, a Saturn Mini would have gone so hard. Like just this top 10 would have made such a cool mini system. But it's
Oh
not to
man,
be, apparently.
I'd take the top 20 we have. Honestly, I'm excited to talk about the rest of the games that didn't quite make the list. But we still have the final 2 to talk about.
Yeah.
So, John,
Well,
what is the number 2 game for the Sega Saturn?
it's either Panzer Dragoon Saga or Nights into Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people voted for Knights. So let's say number 2 is Panzer Dragoon.
You are correct. Panzer Dragoon Saga. And this is where nothing came close. Like it was 3, like from 3 to 10, all relatively within range of each other. Shining Force 3 at 325, Panzer Dragoon Saga at 504 points.
This is genuinely one of the best games ever made. And I
want to play it so much.
Yeah, I that's probably sounds like it's hyperbole because it's so expensive. So of course people are biased towards it, but it is so clever. Like we've talked about how Panzer Dragoon has that being able to change which way you're looking at in a rail shooter, and you just take that core mechanic and apply it to a turn-based RPG. So you're still on your dragon, and you're able to shift around your opponent, which takes up time in like the ATB sort of meter. And so you can either attack or you can move. So it's that sort of risk-reward factor of whether you protect yourself to get in a better position or you just attack. It's so well made. And Panzer Dragoon's world's already fascinating, but when you can, get off the dragon and go into a town and walk around, it's taken to another level. It's 4 discs, so like Final Fantasy VII, there's a lot of FMVs in here. It's extremely epic. And it's also not that long. Despite being 4 discs, I want to say it's like 14 hours or something. It's very
I think it's
brisk.
because it's stuffed full of cutscenes.
Yeah. Full voice acting too. Yeah, they speak like a
voice
different
acting will do
language,
it
but there
too.
is acting in there. But yeah, it's super cool. And I wish people can actually play this someday.
It's funny how you regret not paying $300 for a game.
Yeah. So what's it worth now?
I have no idea. I'd see it at conventions and I'd see $300 and I'd be like, I can't justify that. I can't do it. And nowadays, I don't even want to think about how much it costs. So, oh God, according to Data Alpha Lion, $1,700 on eBay.
Oh.
No.
Yeah. When I used to watch Classic Game Room, which is just a YouTube channel, and a lot of the times they review NES games and be like, "Oh, you can get this for $5," and you look at prices now, and it's like $100 for that one game they said was $5. And with Panzer Dragoon Saga, my wife got that for me for I want to say my 19th or 20th birthday or something.
Oh,
and
wow.
she paid, I want to say like 180 or something, £180, which is still a lot for one game,
It
but
it's
compared to
still a
what it's
lot.
worth now is
I
like
mean,
buttons.
at some point, you could put your kids through college by selling that game.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen, apparently.
Yeah.
Oh god. Um, yeah, American Dragon paid 300 over 300 for my disc-only copy in 2016. Now it'd be a crazy discount. Yeah, and the $300 one I saw actually was in box, had manual.
Yeah.
So, God, I screwed up. Anyway, though, that's Panzer Dragoon's Saga. I wasn't sure how well it would do, honestly, because I know it's well loved, and I would put it on the top 10 just because of sheer um, reputation. But I didn't put it on my top 10 because I never played it, so
Yeah,
I
that's
can't.
fair.
Do I definitively say it? I've never played it, so I don't want to put it. John, I think you know what number one is.
I think I knew this coming in. Nights into Dreams is it's like the most iconic Saturn game. I think
It
everyone who has
is.
a Saturn has probably played it.
It's
It is really good. Growing up, I didn't fully understand Nights into Dreams. I'd just sort of race through it, get a bad grade, and then keep going. In recent years, though, I've properly come to understand that you're meant to sort of go around in laps, like rather than just trying to race your way through, you're meant to be trying to maximize your score to get a better rank. And
mhm.
playing it that way, where you sort of go past the goal and keep going to get more stuff, I've actually come to appreciate it a lot more. And so this game has actually come around on me a lot. I used to see it as just kind of fine, but I really like Nights now.
You know, it's funny is I worked the same way where I didn't quite get Knights. I liked Knights. The vibe of Knights just immediately stuck with me. The two different kids he had there. Knights himself or themself was I don't know, something about its posing was always fun to me.
Mm,
I like it acting like it's playing a flute, but there's no flute. I don't know why, but that's such an iconic pose to
yeah,
me that it just I like Knights. He is just a they are just a strange, fun character. But then I could never beat the game because I could never get a high enough rank to get through it. It wasn't until I came back later that I was able to actually play it and beat it because I understood like you. And once you understand that it is all more about points and not speed, then because there was a speed bonus. So I was like,
yeah,
oh, the faster I go, the better points I'll get. But no, you want to try to mix and match. And yeah, just having that game, it's gorgeous, it's fun. I kind of liked falling out of nights, like running out of time and falling out of nights as a kids, because then you could explore the world
yeah. But
more,
it's
but then you get
3D.
caught. Yeah, it's full 3D. It's like all of it's actually there, which is a wild concept for it.
Mm.
Um, I never played Journey of
Oh,
Dreams
the
for
Wii
the
game.
Wii.
Mm.
Yeah, the Wii game. But yeah, Nights into Dreams from the start, it was just took off 737 points compared to Panzer Dragoon's 500. So yeah,
Yeah, the
not
Wii game
even
was that
close.
Sega era where they have a good core and then they sort of pad it out with other stuff. They're like, oh, what if you play as the kids, but in between the knights levels and things like that. Whereas the Saturn game was
Mhm.
very much okay. You just go from this level to this level. You're flying around, and that was there's no other at that point there weren't really any other video games that just let you fly. You know, as a humanoid, like
Mhm.
rather than being a plane or something. Like just being able to fly around gracefully. You also had the Saturn 3D controller, which made that a bit easier too.
I got mine. I got my Knights with that, where it had
Mm.
the analog stick. It was massive, but it did feel better to control that way.
And was that the first analog controller? I think it might be. I think it
I don't
predated
know.
the DualShock.
I don't know when Knights. I don't know what year Knights came out.
I want to say Knights was
Uh,
96, I think.
yeah, 1996, and the N64. The N64. I think the N64 came out before this. Before the Dual
Oh,
Shock.
it came out like a month before the N64 did. So technically, technically it was.
Technically,
Technically it was
wow,
the first analog controller.
that's that's why everybody had the same idea. Analog is the way it's at.
Yeah. But no, it is a really good game. Extremely whimsical, nothing like it.
No,
The only thing you can compare to Knights, I think, in terms of vibe, is something like Balan, but in terms of actual how they play, they're nothing alike.
nothing like nothing. It's there's just a free flowing and honestly great bosses too. Like the
Yeah.
bosses are all fun. You immediately have this rival character with Riala, who's
Mm.
just also another cool design. Um, Knights is very freaky in the Sonic racing games though, because
Yeah.
he transform or they transform into different ones, but different car forms.
And shout out to
Um,
the demo disc to Christmas nights. So with the
yes,
demo disc, it's just a regular demo. But if you play on Christmas or New Year, you get different like themes. It starts snowing. You get Christmas music. You can unlock a 32-bit Sonic model to run around with. There's a lot of just fun meta stuff in there.
and I believe the version that's available now, that's on Steam, was put on PlayStation 3, does have Christmas
I
Nights
think so.
as part of all that.
Yeah,
So
that's just an annual game for me. Like whenever it's like Christmas time, I just sort of plug in Christmas nights and have a bit of a fly around.
I mean, it's fun.
Yeah,
It's just pure fun. But yeah, that is our top 10. I think it's a pretty solid top 10
yeah,
overall.
I
Like,
think so.
obviously, there were some ones on here that did not make the list that people I'm sure would prefer. I imagine Guardian Heroes fans want to get rid of Sonic Jam, but that's just how it is.
Mm,
But yeah, let me actually cover what came close because I
yes.
think the like 11 to 20 is just as
Oh,
strong.
I bet.
Uh, 11 Guardian Heroes, as I said before. Number 12, only 6 points behind Fighters Mega Mix.
Cool. This was on my personal list. Such a cool one. You get it's kind of like Smash Brothers before Smash Brothers, where it's like fighting Vipers X Virtua Fighter. But you also get
Mhm.
like the Hornet from Daytona USA that you can use to just punch people with its tires. Megamix is so cool.
You got Bark the polar bear from
Yeah.
the not Sonic or any of the other named characters. No, Bark the
Yeah, just
polar bear
bark.
who is makes it in the Mega Mix. Um, so that that was fun to see that to get that got in. And then, as I said before, Sega Rally Championship at
Mm,
number 13, only 9 points behind Fighters Mega Mix. It was close. They were clawing their way there.
yeah.
Number 14, 1 point behind, as I mentioned before, Daytona USA. At number 15, 20 points behind, Saturn Bomberman.
Very cool one. You can get so Saturn's got two controller ports on the console, but with Saturn Bomberman, you can get two multi taps, maybe four multi taps.
Oh,
But you
wow.
can get up to I think 12 players.
Dang.
Yeah, using a bunch of multi taps. I'm pretty sure it's 12-player.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
There's so many Bomberman. Why haven't we got a Bomberman collection yet? There's so many Bomberman games out
extremely
there.
logical. Yeah, we should.
That's that's a shame. I was rooting for it. I was like, oh, Saturn Bomberman. That's a cool
It's a
idea.
cool one. Yeah,
At number 16, with 153 points, just missing it by 15. Sakura Wars,
nice.
which is extremely impressive because this is very much still Japanese only.
Yes,
There's a
I
fan
have it. I've got it
translation.
over there. But obviously it's Japanese only, so I can't understand it. There are fan translations, but yeah, very very cool one. The only Sakura Wars game I've actually properly played is the PS4 one, because it's so rare that we actually get them over here.
I own that, but I have not had a chance to play it.
Mm,
I've heard it's not a strategy game like the others, but
mm,
I heard it's still good. At number 17, only 6 points behind, X-Men versus Street Fighter.
nice. I was thinking a few Capcom fighters would show up. This is a very good console for fighters, especially
Mm.
with imports. But yeah, there's a lot I think that will probably keep showing up as the list goes on.
Oh yeah, for sure. Number 18, 6 points behind that, Sonic 3D Blast.
It's a cool version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was I'm honestly I'm surprised that I was expecting Sonic fans to push that over Sonic Jam, but no, Sonic Jam won out.
Yeah, I mean, this one's got its own soundtrack. There's like fully 3D special stages. It's the half pipe from Sonic 2, apart from it's properly 3D, so you can actually enjoy it.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
it's pretty good.
yeah. I had it on Genesis, but it was never my favorite. It was
Mm.
interesting, but yeah. Number 19, I was pulling for this one, Grandia.
Very cool. Yeah. Is this
Yeah.
one that you associate with PlayStation or
I never played it. I still haven't played it yet. I have the HD collection,
mm,
but I've not played through it. But I always heard Grandia in relation to the Saturn over the PlayStation
mm.
personally.
I mean, this is something that you and I have spoken about before. That a lot of games like originated on the Saturn, like Tomb Raider came out on the Saturn before PlayStation. But no
Mm.
one like when you think PlayStation, you think Tomb Raider. No one's really thinking Saturn and Tomb Raider. So that's something I sort of had in mind when crafting my own list. Like Tomb Raider may have like originated on the Saturn, but do I actually see it as a Saturn game? Not so much.
Not really. So I can see people seeing this as a more of a Saturn game because
Yeah.
it's people just I think associate Grandia with Saturn because they feel it's the better version. I
Yeah.
don't know for sure. I don't know what the differences are. But yeah. Then at number 20, only 1 point behind, Dragon Force,
Cool. Very cool.
which I believe is that a beat 'em up? What is that? What type of game is that?
It's been a while since I actually I had it, and
It's
it's
an
somehow
RTS. It's
scraping
a
my mind.
it's a real time strategy RPG.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So that's impressive.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, again, extremely solid top 20, but also getting into what we were talking about before,
Mm.
with associations. 21 Mega Man X4, 22 Mega Man 8, and 22 Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
All games that are excellent. I'll have to decide on if they're going to make my top PlayStation list because that's the thing. I associate them more with PlayStation. I think it's
Right.
because a lot of these are Japanese exclusive.
Right. Yeah. Saturn also got Resident Evil. It got
Mhm.
it got a bunch of
And there were a few votes
PlayStation.
for that.
Yeah. There's a lot of big PlayStation games that weren't actually exclusive to PlayStation in the end. Like Rayman debuted on the Atari Jaguar. Uh, Final Fantasy VII was multi-platform with PC. Like there's like when you like think about it, a lot of the biggest games they were available elsewhere, but we just sort of associate them with PlayStation.
Yeah, it's just because I think that's just how most, at least Americans,
That's how
played it.
most of
But
us played it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure about Europe, so I didn't want to say.
No, I'm pretty sure that's true most places. Like Saturn was
Okay.
pretty popular in Japan. It's mildly popular in Europe, but PlayStation still like just dominated everywhere.
I remember PlayStation. I think PlayStation was like the biggest in Europe almost. Like it
Yeah, I
was
think that's true.
huge in Europe. But to round out the top 30, just to go for quick, 24, because Mega Man 8 and Castlevania both actually tied at 112 points. It was actually kind of crazy. 24, Magic Knight Ray Earth, which I know is a bit of a fan favorite there. 25, Bulk Slash. Then we had a three-way tie for 26 with Virtual On Cyber Troopers, Fighting Vipers, and Shining the Holy Ark.
Cool.
Then at 29, Clockwork Knight,
I
and
thought that would be
30,
here.
yep, and 30, Princess Crown, which is proto Vanillaware.
Oh,
This is the name Vanillaware made before becoming Vanillaware, officially. So because it was published by Atlas, in
yeah.
that case. So, and then just for fun, 31 was Devil Summoner Soul Hackers.
Mm,
32 was Christmas Nights, and so forth. So that'll be just the major ones I'll cover for now. But that's the ones that made the definite high list there. I just was like, oh wow, Shin Megami Tensei game was almost up there despite being Japanese only. Although I
yeah.
did get I think a DS or 3DS port.
It's a shame
So
not to see the rail shooters here, like Virtua Cop or House of the Dead, but
Vir-
House of the Dead
Virtual
isn't.
Cop
Mm,
Virtual Cop 2 was actually right after Christmas Night, so it's
okay, that's cool.
33.
All right. Yeah, that
Um
deserves it.
as far as what was the other one? The House of the Dead. House of the Dead did not get a lot of
Yeah, the
votes.
Saturn version isn't that great, to be fair. On
Yeah.
Dreamcast though, House of the Dead 2. Oh, that's exactly what live audience is saying right now. If House of the Dead 2 isn't on the Dreamcast list, we have failed everybody. We've got to make it happen.
uh Die Hard Arcade did okay. It got 48 points, but came behind Sakura Wars 2. Um And then our next like arcade, like perfect like fighting game that came out from Capcom was actually Vampire Savior,
Yes.
just beating out Street Fighter Alpha 2.
Mm,
So it's an interesting list. It's a fascinating list with the Saturn, but obviously there's everybody's gonna have their opinions about what should be where. But I think overall pretty solid for Sega Saturn.
it's good. Yeah, it's very good. If you explore, more internationally, you're more into the Japanese side, then there's definitely some shortcomings. But I think in terms of what most Western people played, it's a very good list.
Yeah, very much so. Now Sega just needs to re-release a bunch of
Yeah.
them. That's really what it comes down to. But yeah, that is our Saturn list. And oh, John, we are I think this next one might surpass the Super Nintendo, to
Oh
be
yeah.
honest. because our next top 10 games of all time is going to be the PlayStation 1.
Yes. How many of these will be RPGs? We shall see.
This is going to be brutal to go through.
But
Good God.
yeah, I mean, I joke about that, but there's so many genres on PlayStation. When you look at something like N64, you've got like a game per genre in some cases. Like when you think of RPGs, everyone thinks Quest 64. Um, with PlayStation, like everything is filled, and then it has way
Yeah.
more than that. It's the Wild West. It's so hard to predict where people are going to go.
You've got Mega Man, you got Castlevania, you got Ape Escape, you got Crash, you got
Yeah,
Spyro, you've got Metal Gear Solid, you've got the Final Fantasies, you've got the other Squaresoft RPGs, you got
it's endless. It's endless.
it's
Yeah.
so many out there. It is. I have. I'll be honest. I have no idea what's going to be number one. I'm going to predict right now that it's either going to be Metal Gear Solid or Final Fantasy VII.
Symphony of the Night's also a very strong candidate.
It is. It is.
And in
It
our
might.
ideal world, Mega Man Legends is number one too.
I
So,
know. I
it
mean,
won't be, but it should be.
it won't. I'll be voting for it. I can tell you that right now. Oh God. Yeah. This is going to be a rough one for me to count. I can tell
Yeah,
you that right now. But we're gonna do it. So.
yeah.
Oh God.
I'm already
Oh yeah,
struggling.
Silent Hill. God, I forgot about Silent Hill. Resident Evil.
It's almost impossible to make a list you're satisfied with. I'm gonna
Yeah,
draft mine
nobody's gonna be
out.
satisfied with this. That's the thing. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna be satisfied with my own
No,
list.
I'm gonna
That's
draft mine out, and then I'm gonna just take it all away a couple of times until I finally just post it. But yeah, I can't even formulate what my favorite PlayStation game is right now.
I couldn't tell you. Hey, I had a mention of Crash, Zelda, Caitlin. Um, but yeah, we'll have to see what that's like next week. But for now, that is our top tens for the Sega Game Gear and Sega Saturn. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. I know it's not quite as the popular systems, but I appreciate you all watching nonetheless. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/gbgaming. But even just subscribing to the channel and ringing that bell helps us a ton. So until next time, bye.